Hi guys, it's Waypick Master here. Today I've got the video for you. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of working from home, running your own business. Now, one of the reasons I want to talk about this is because a lot of people out there, they want to get a job. They want to work towards leaving their job behind, starting a business at home so they can have that flexibility, the option to move ahead, and they know all the things they want out of the job without considering that there are a few sort of negatives about working from home. Now they're easily overcome, which is what I'm also going to touch on in this video, but it's something to be prepared for that, okay, when I start working from home, these are some of the challenges I'm going to face. Now I've actually been working from home for a few years. I've got a freelance business. I now my family is actually supported by this entirely. It's my sole income. So my wife was able to quit her job, and there's definitely some pros and cons to how we got there. But if you address these and really keep them in your mind, you can make it work really well for you. And from experience, I've got to say it is definitely worth getting through those obstacles to get to that side so that you can really start to enjoy the flexibility that an at-home business offers you. So, let's go through some of the pros. First of all, you've got a few things here. You've got flexible hours for one. You can work whenever you want. You can choose to work your normal 40-hour week during the day. If you work better at night, you can choose to work from 6 at night until 2 in the morning if you want to. You can pretty much do whatever you want. Quite often I have things that pop up during the day, so I'll go, okay, I'm going to go make sure I'm at that event or wherever it is during the day, and I'll just make up that time tonight at home when I get home. The ability to move your schedule around is quite good, and that's because of another benefit, the benefit that you quite often have no boss. Now, it's not just about not having a boss because bosses are bad. A lot of people need bosses because bosses keep them in line, they keep them working, they keep them productive. But some people who are naturally hard workers will find that a boss adds another layer of stress. Instead of just trying to please a customer, they're also trying to please a boss, and it becomes this heavy lifting scenario where they're trying to constantly please this person who, realistically, if you're doing a good job, you don't need that extra stress. Now, I actually worked at a graphic design studio for years, and it was a really good job. I have no complaints about the job, but I found that because I can be a bit of a people pleaser, having a boss's presence meant that I kept trying to please him and a customer, and it's been a lot easier for me personally being able to just focus on pleasing the customer and not worrying about the boss. So that's one benefit about working from home, which is pretty cool. Now the other thing is, if you have a family, you get to spend more time with them. Whether they're at home or not, you can be more flexible and available when they're available to spend time with them. But also if they are home, such as my wife and my daughter, they're home all day. So when I come out, if I want to have a break for 5 minutes, I can come out, say hello, play with my daughter a little bit, and then get back to work afterwards. So that is one benefit of work from home, is that you have that, not only the flexibility, but the access that someone's right there. Or if you're picking up kids from school at 3 o'clock, you have the ability to go there, spend some time with them, pick up your work later when they're asleep if you want to, and spend more time with them that way. Now that's a really powerful con. If you have a family, or even if you have friends, friends coming to town, you get to see more people because you're able to take more control of your schedule. This comes under the flexible hours for one, but the fact that people can be nearby. Maybe you have roommates that live nearby, work odd hours. You get to see them when they're not at work, that sort of thing. That can be pretty handy and a good way to increase give yourself a bit more happiness in your life, because you get to see more people. And another thing which I think is really cool is the fact that if you're working from home, if you're not seeing customers, you have a very casual dress. So you don't necessarily have to get dressed professionally for your day. You can come out in a singlet and shorts or no shirt at all. The old joke is a lot of people come out in their undies and work from home. I personally don't find that too effective. But it's a good way to you can just keep yourself, depending on the type of person you are, if you get stressed out and too wound up when you're too uptight, having little things like that, being able to be casual in your dress and casual in the way you approach things, can really decrease your stress levels and just make working at home just a bit better than than going to a job and having to be really tight and following the rules and that sort of thing. The other thing is, there's a lot more earning potential when you run your own business, and especially when you work from home, because I've actually done another video on this about charging an hourly rate. You can charge a lot more hourly rate. If you want to make even similar amounts of money, you still got to charge more. But the fact is that you can start to set things up and you're in control of what your business does. You can set up certain things that don't require as much of your time. You can create products. You can start to generate passive income services, which I do, like with affiliate marketing and a few products I sell online. And you can start to generate more money, and you'll make more money than you could have in your job. In a job, you generally set at your wage, and while this isn't always true, some jobs pay very highly and maybe you can't compete with that. for a lot of people, especially working in office environments, if you're able to do your job at home as a business that you run yourself, then you have a lot more potential to charge more and structure things the way you want and make more money. The other thing is about that is you get to control your work environment. Sometimes if you're stuck in a cubicle, it might not be the most welcoming environment. You feel like you're locked in, there's nothing around. But otherwise, if you're someone who works hard and at home and you've got a nice setup, then you can actually control that environment because you can set things up the way you want. You can actually have, if you want to have, photos of your family up on the wall, if you want to have certain things in the room, a certain amount of space, you want to lay the desk out the way you want so you got the workflow that suits you. All those things make working just a bit easier and a little bit less sort of stressful because you're able to really set things up the way you want and take control of your work environment. Now this might not sound like a huge thing, but it is definitely a big deal if you're looking to be happier in your work, is controlling that work environment and making things the way you want them to be. Another cool thing is that there's no travel. Now I live in a small town where I only had to travel 5-10 minutes to work. But if you live in a city, sometimes you can be traveling an hour to work and an hour back from work. That's 2 hours out of your day. You've earned no money, you've traveled, and that's all just so that you can support your family or your household financially. But if you're working from home, it is literally just a case of walking into your office and starting work. You can save a lot of time if you're in an area which takes a lot of travel to get to work. All of a sudden you have this extra time because you're not having to go all the way across town to work. You're just walking into the room, booting up and starting, which is a huge deal in terms of trying to free up your lifestyle a bit. Now, another pro is the fact that you can actually stop yourself from buying lunch. That might be a con for some people, but if you're looking to stay on a budget, or maybe you're looking to stay on a diet, you're trying to control your food and your health and that sort of thing. This is a little bit obscure, but a lot of people out there are very health conscious these days, especially a lot of people who work from home. The people who take control of their lives, they generally try to take control of their health. And when there's no healthy options around where you're working, and maybe there's not somewhere where you can really put your food and in a convenient manner, being able to work at home means you have access to all the food you plan out. You can keep a healthy fridge in there. You spend less money getting takeaway every day. And that's actually one really big factor for me personally, where I don't find myself spending as much money buying food because I just go to my fridge and I've got my food prepped for the week. I just pull it out, eat it, go from there. If I want to mix up a smoothie or make a cup of tea, it's quite easy. It's all exactly the way I want it because I'm working from home. Now, the overall overarching thing about this is, of course, that you can reduce your stress. You can take control of the entire situation and reduce stress because anything that stresses you out, you can look at it, assess it, and realize, how can I make this less stressful for myself? Because you're in complete control. You're in complete control of your business, you're in complete control of your environment, and everything you do, you have complete control of because you've decided to step out and take the ownership of your work and your income in that sense. It's really cool the way you can reduce your stress with all these things. But the other thing that I haven't mentioned so far is the tax advantages. Now, working from home, I have an air-conditioned office here in my house. Now, the aircon itself I would have gotten anyway, but the fact that I'm able to claim it on tax because it's in my office is a major benefit. I'm able to claim a certain amount of expenses in my house that I'd normally have to pay anyway. They're claimed on tax. Things like my internet, my phone, any of the bits and pieces that I would have been paying anyway are claimed on tax. So I actually get a little bit of a kickback at the end of the year where I get a little bit of money back for things I would have had to pay for anyway because I'm actually working in that environment at home. And even things like a computer. I've always had a computer. Generally speaking, most people have computers, but now that I'm using it for work, it's claimable on tax, and when I buy a new one, that is also claimable on tax. So that's another one of the benefits of working from home, is actually having a computer, or not computer, having the tax advantages of these bits and pieces, or the equipment you buy, cameras, that sort of thing, because all of a sudden it becomes less of a personal expense, more of a business expense. And that is something that's really cool and a huge benefit if you are in a very equipment-based sort of business, like, a personal equipment business, like we need computers, cameras, and that sort of thing. Now we're going to jump onto some of the cons and how you can sort of work around them. These are the things that you might not think about, but they're definitely there, and you need to really be aware of them before you consider freelancing. Now the first one is that there can be a lot of distractions. When you're working from home, quite often you can get caught up. If you have a TV running in the background, sometimes you can turn and get caught watching TV. Sometimes you can go, oh, I'm hungry, and keep going back and forth to the kitchen. It can be very easy to lose your motivation. So it's just very hard because you can be distracted. And on top of that, you might start allowing people in, and people will not respect your work time, which is another one. Sometimes people do not respect your work time. They simply pop up whenever they feel like it, walk to your house or come into your house or knock on the door and think, oh, he's working home, he's not busy. And if you're polite, you might end up losing an hour or two being hospitable to these people, and you might not get that time back if you're a busy person outside of work. Now this is also a thing for customers too. One thing that can happen is sometimes customers learn your address and they can just simply arrive on your doorstep, knocking on the door, thinking they can contact you at any time. Now this is a bit of an issue, because when you're working from home, you need to be able to structure your day. And if you're working alone, you really need to maximize the amount of time you have available to you. And when someone just rocks up unannounced, it's not good. You need to definitely set up an appointment-based scenario. And one of the ways I work around that in particular is I try not to give out my address. If I have a meeting, I'll actually go to a cafe downtown because it's only 5 minutes away, or you can have a Skype meeting or a meeting over the phone, and I'll try to have the meeting happen away from the house. Sometimes I'll actually, if their business is close enough, I'll go to their business and meet them there. And that way I'm keeping people away from the house, because it's just not suitable to have people here, because it's just, people get a little too comfortable. And it can get worse, especially when you're switched off on the weekend and they start arriving on the weekend to basically come and talk about their job, or maybe their website's experiencing problems, so they just arrive at your house and maybe you're just not in a position to receive people at that time. So you've really got to protect your address. If you don't want people coming around to your house, you've got to find a method to keep the same level of professionalism but keep people away from your house, because that is definitely a valuable sort of methodology, if you will, for working at home, and make sure your time is structured so that you maximize it. Now, one of the things I find too, when you're talking about people arriving on weekends, is switching off after work when you're not working is one of the worst things about working from home, especially in the beginning. Because when you're working elsewhere, quite often you're in a completely separate environment. And when you come home, you switch off because your whole environment has changed. Everything is completely different, and it's easier for your brain to recognize that this is leisure time, that is work time. But when you're working from home, you never really leave the environment unless you're closing a door behind you. You're kind of caught up, and sometimes you'll find, for at least the first 4 or 5 weeks when I was working from home, my brain couldn't switch off because it kept thinking, I need to check my emails to make sure something's going on. And these days you've got phones and tablets and you're going through and making sure, oh, I've got an email, I better respond to that. So you need to start to, there's a few things you can do to make sure you switch off. One is to, first of all, set a schedule. Set the times you work, start and finish at those times in almost a very hard fashion. If you need to do overtime, you need to plan it, set the times for overtime, so that way anytime you're working, it is a planned section of time that you're working in, and that way you're more able to mentally switch on and off. The other thing is to have a designated office. Having an office that's designated for your work area means you're able to walk in, start work, you're inside that environment, same as if you're working elsewhere, and then step out and try to stay out of the office when you're not working. Close the door, and that way you can actually step away from the work you're doing. Now this also works now. Before I was talking about tablets and phones and how they can link up to your email. You need to start identifying personal and business devices. Now I've actually got 2 phones because quite often I have customers try to contact me outside of hours, and while I don't ignore them, I do check throughout, like once or twice throughout a weekend, that sort of thing, to make sure they're being looked after. When I'm on the weekend, you're going to destroy your relaxation. You're just going to be stressed if you're constantly available to be called. So make sure you have a personal phone. Do not advertise that number. Keep it separate. If you've got an iPad you like to use in bed and relax with, do not put any work-related material on it. Keep everything separate. Separate as much as you can physically and mentally with your time, with your devices, to make sure that you're actually giving your brain that mental switch to know that this is no longer work time, this is work time, this is leisure time. And another thing you can do also is, now I said before, you can have casual dress. Some people react to how they're dressed. I actually have a uniform, so you've got a logo here. I find wearing a uniform sometimes helps me to get in the mode to work, because all of a sudden I'm dressed, I'm ready for work, and I'm getting started. So there are a few bits and pieces that you can do to make sure that you're not getting distracted and you're not blending the 2 times together. Because sometimes another work stress can affect you during times of leisure. So if you've got an issue, something that's unresolved, that's one of the cons, is the fact that it just in the next room, right next door, 2 seconds away, a big problem is waiting for you and you're trying to relax in the next room. So you need to learn, even just mentally, to switch off. You need to learn to go, okay, I need to focus on something fun. I need to find an activity, take up a hobby, whatever it is, something that relaxes me. I need to attach myself to that thing to make sure I don't get stressed out by the work that's in the office. So that's a huge part of working from home, is making sure you have that separation physically, mentally, with your schedule. Otherwise, you might go a little bit insane. Now, the other thing is you might need a little bit of motivation to get working. This is something that's not too hard, especially once you get that separation going, but you might find it hard to stay motivated to work. You might be able to be a bit more casual, and because of that, you can also have a bit of your productivity can suffer. And those are two things. So with your motivation and the fact that you can be more casual, you can lose productivity. So you need to make sure that you set a goal or something every day. Make sure you're earning. I like to track my earnings every day to make sure that I'm getting where I need to go. I know on most days roughly how much money I've earned during that day, or if I've contributed to a larger project that is more of a packaged price, I can then make sure that I'm on track for the day. Because if I don't, you start to realize that you're running out of money, and then the stress sets in. So keeping that motivation of, okay, I'm going to hit that target today, I want to earn this much today, I want to get this much done. Make sure you plan out your day so that way you can stay motivated to crunch through that list. Now, because of the nature of business, sometimes you don't quite get enough work to keep yourself busy all the time. So one of the cons is, if you're running a business at all, whether it's from home or not, is that your income can be a lot less stable. Because you're not getting a regular income from your boss, things can go up and down, and before you know it, you can actually find yourself in a bit of a dry patch and getting a bit of the hot cold scenario where people get over flooded with work and then all of a sudden they have nothing. So you need to make sure that you got to sort of generate the business, generate a good network so that you're getting a nice steady flow of ongoing work. Now, I find I rarely end up in the lull anymore. So you do find then there's another issue of trying to keep up with work when it's just you. That can also be difficult. And it's one of those things you do need to be aware of if you're freelancing. You need to really take control of the work you have and make sure that you try and find ways to make your flow a bit more stable. It's not going to be 100% the same as getting a wage, especially if people are slow payers or you're invoicing once a month with accounts and that sort of thing. It can get a bit difficult, but that's another con of working from home, but it is something you can work on to try and improve, just simply by the way you offer your services, the way you charge, that sort of thing. The other thing is, you're in a house, if you've got a few bedrooms and you do want to get a designated office, which I do recommend, especially for that work-life separation, is that you can lose a room in the house. For example, I live in a 3-bedroom house in Australia. At the moment, my wife and I, we have a daughter. If we have a second kid, eventually we're going to have to look at trying to get another bedroom. Now, if I wasn't working from home, that wouldn't be an issue because we have the 3 bedrooms, but now that the office is set up, I've got 2 bedrooms. So one thing that may happen to you is you might find you lose a room in your house because of the simple fact that you need that to work. You need that to support the house. You need that to support to generate an income. So that is one con of working from home. But I mean, with the tax benefits and that, it might also help in other ways, but that's just something that you're going to have to accept, or maybe eventually plan to try and increase your income enough so you can get a bigger house with more rooms, or even just set up an office, rent a small office space eventually, that sort of thing. So there's a few, that is one kind of working from home, is that you do lose a bit of space, but to be honest, I actually find my office a quite relaxing place to be anyway, so it's kind of like a little man cave I get to have sometimes. Like, while I say you do remove yourself from the office, I've reached a point where I can switch off and be in and out of the office if I want to, where some people need that physical separation to be pretty black and white. But it's kind of cool because at least you've got a bit of space there, and you do need it, so you can take advantage of that as well. So, but yes, do realize that you might lose a space or even a corner in the lounge room at least if you're going to be freelancing from home. Now, the other thing is, if you're in a household where people go to work during the day, is that you can get rather lonely. Now, before I was saying you get to see your family more often, but that also has the opposite effect, where sometimes you're at home by yourself all day, every day. You're not talking to people, and you can end up getting a bit lonely. And even if you don't feel lonely, sometimes you can find certain standards may drop. Maybe you don't, groom yourself as well. Maybe that sort of thing. And it can be a bit of a negative effect. So you need to make sure, for one, that you're looking after yourself, keeping yourself in a presentable manner, and making sure you socialize. And one of the things I did to keep sane is, for one, I lived with my wife when I started, so I see her at night and in the mornings. But I also teach martial arts. I teach Muay Thai, I have a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I was able to go to training and really get my socializing out there and have a good laugh, come home. I was able to keep that balance a little bit better than a lot of people might if they're not going out at night and have something to do or a way of socializing. So make sure you do find a way to see people. If you're at home alone all day working, it's definitely important to make sure you get those connections with people to keep your sanity. All right, so that's pretty much it. That's the bulk of what we're looking at here. those are pretty much the pros and cons. There was a bit of a longer video, but it's one of those things you just need to really have a look at everything. You've got all your pros written down. Be aware of what could go wrong. If you think any of those things will apply to you, start to think now about how you tackle them. As they pop up, learn to tackle them. One thing I like to say is I used to be someone who really prepared and tried to do everything ahead of time. Sometimes it's good just to let these bad things happen where you start to feel the pinch and then go, okay, how can I deal with it? Because quite often the solution you come up with on the spot might be a bit more direct than you trying to figure out how to work around it ahead of time. And that can have its own stresses if you're really trying to do everything ahead of time. But just be aware of those things. Work around the cons, enjoy the pros, and make your adjustments and go from there. So if you're looking at starting a business from home, that's definitely a mindset to keep because it is definitely worth the investment. I love working from home. Like I said, I had a really good job before I started my business at home here, but this is definitely the way to be. And although it does have its stresses at times, the simple fact that I have full control on my day is an unbeatable thing. The flexibility, it's excellent. The fact that I get to see my daughter multiple times a day while she's still little. A lot of people don't get that advantage when they run their own business or work for someone else. So it's definitely worth doing. The other thing I want to say is if you are looking at working from home and you are also looking at starting up a website to try and reach more people, I do have a guide on my website, willbuildyourblog.com. It's totally free, tell you how to start a website, get everything set up from security, what plugins you might need for search engine optimization, that sort of thing. I have a free guide there, and if you would like to check that out, that's free on the website. I'll put a link in the description below. Otherwise, if you want to see more videos like this about freelancing, work from home, that sort of thing, please feel free to subscribe below. And yeah, hopefully we'll send more videos your way about this topic. Now, thanks for watching, and hope you have a good day. See ya.